This is the Andy Pollin Hour on Washington's new home for sports. ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Tony's taking the next few days off, so you got 2 hours of me, or however much of me you want, for the next 3 days. I'll be here till noon, so if you want to pop in, pop out, whatever, I'll be doing 2-hour shows the next 3 days, and then Tony's back on Friday. If you've not heard, Ken Meese, who was a longtime reporter and sports anchor at Channel 9, has passed away. And I want to talk a little bit about him later this hour. I didn't know Ken well, but I knew him a bit, and he was beloved by everybody who knew him. Just a real mensch, a good guy, and as they say, attention needs to be paid. And we'll talk about Ken a little bit later on. But this is now breaking, and it's being widely reported, first reported by J.P. Finley of NBC Sports Washington, and the other beat reporters have confirmed this, that the Commanders are going to retire Sonny Jurgensen's number 9. Now, I don't think it's any coincidence that they're leaking this information on the day that Sonny turns 88 years old. So happy birthday, Sonny. I was fortunate enough in my career to work with him on the air many, many times, and I think he's just such an iconic figure, not just for sports in this town, but among all the people who have ever lived here. I think Sonny Jurgensen is one of the great icons of the Washington, D.C. community. But I was thinking about this and the retirement of his number, and John Keim has put this out. I don't know if any of the other beat reporters have this, but he says it's going to happen for the final game, which is January 8th when they play the Dallas Cowboys. And I look at this in a couple of ways. One, yes, it makes sense to retire Sonny's number on the day that you're playing Dallas, because that's the big rivalry. That's the team that you get most ginned up for is to play Dallas. And Sonny certainly had some big games against Dallas. The first one that comes to mind is the game on Monday Night Football in 1973 when Ken Houston corralled Walt Garrison at the goal line, dragged him down, and the Redskins beat the Cowboys 14-7. There have been other games that Sonny played against the Cowboys, some great games over the years, but it makes sense to retire his number on that day. The problem is the weather's likely to stink. January 8th, you don't know what you're going to get. And the other thing is, you don't know where the team is going to be. If they go into that game and it means something, it means getting the playoffs or winning the division or something like that, that makes it really important. But it's possible they go into this with 5 or 6 wins and it doesn't mean anything, and they just be using Sonny to get people interested in going to the game. But whatever it is, it's an honor that's well-deserved. Certainly, Sonny's number should have been retired. Now, I came of age as a sports fan in 1966. That's really the first memorable year I have of being a fan. I was 7 going on 8 when my father took me to my first baseball game, Washington Senators against the Boston Red Sox at D.C. Stadium. And I remember that well. It's the same feeling that is expressed in the movie City Slickers when they talk about, they're riding the range, and Billy Crystal says the best day of his life is when he goes to Yankee Stadium for the first time with his father, and they walk through the tunnel and they look out on the field. And like Billy Crystal, we only had a black and white television, so to see the field so green is something I vividly remember. And the Senators were a bad team, but they had one star player who wore number 9. His name was Frank Howard. Frank Howard had come over from the Dodgers, and he was a big slugger, 6'7", led the league in home runs a couple of times, and he was their one really marketable star wearing number 9. And then later that year, I went to my first football game with my dad to see the Washington Redskins play, and it was Sonny Jurgensen wearing number 9, and they became my first 2 boyhood heroes. And again, as great fortune struck me, I was able to actually get to know Sonny and work with him over the years. I've met Frank Howard a couple of times. I've interviewed him for a podcast and some other on-air things, but really, a great thrill to live out that fantasy of getting to meet your heroes. So actually, Frank Howard had to give up number 9 in 1969 when Ted Williams became manager of the team. And Ted Williams is in the Hall of Fame and had worn number 9 throughout his career for the Boston Red Sox. So it made sense that Williams would keep number 9 and Howard went to 33. But Sonny wore number 9 for the rest of his career. And for many years, the team had a policy of not retiring numbers. The only number that had been officially retired was Sammy Baugh's 33. Sammy Baugh was the first big star of the franchise after they moved here from Boston in 1937. And in 1950, he was named the greatest pro football player of the first half of the 20th century and was one of the inaugural members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You had to retire 33. But there were a bunch of numbers that remained unofficially retired. Jay Bernetti was the equipment manager, and he just wouldn't give them out, and it made sense that he wouldn't. And Sonny's 9 was one of them. Charlie Taylor's 42 was one of them. Larry Brown, who's not in the Hall of Fame, maybe he should be in the Hall of Fame, 43, that wasn't given out. Bobby Mitchell's 49, and then over the years, as others retired, like Darrell Green, the 28 wouldn't be given out, Art Monk, 81, et cetera, et cetera. In 2002, Steve Spurrier comes in, and Jay Bernetti, the equipment guy, is gone. He doesn't know, Spurrier doesn't know anything really about numbers, and he says, Danny Werfel, want to wear 7? Okay, fine. Shane Matthews, want to wear 9? That's fine. They'd worn those numbers before. And they come out on the practice field for, I guess it was minicamp, and people, whoa, wait a minute. What's Theismann's 7 doing out of circulation here? What's Sonny's number 9 doing here? And fortunately, the public prevailed, and Danny Werfel went to number 17, and Shane Matthews wore 6, and the numbers went out of circulation again. However, and this should be recognized, there was a backup tight end on that team named Leonard Stevens, and they issued him number 49, which should have been out of circulation for Bobby Mitchell. And I remember saying things about this on the air many times. I contacted Carl Swanson, who was the PR guy for Dan Snyder at the time, and I said, this is crazy. You can't give out 49. It was totally ignored. They went through the whole season with Leonard Stevens as 49. Sure enough, at the end of the year, Bobby Mitchell had had enough. He had been passed over twice in his efforts to become general manager. He stayed with the team in a front office job, but didn't feel like he was treated properly. And he said the final straw was they gave out my number 49 to a backup player. And he said he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to embarrass Leonard Stevens. That's the kind of guy Bobby Mitchell was. So years go by. Bobby Mitchell passes away. We have the Black Lives Matter movement, the George Floyd tragedy, all of that. And this organization uses Bobby Mitchell to kind of make a statement, and they officially retire his number long after that should have been done. Last year, they get themselves in a bind over something. I forget exactly what it was. Maybe those the new allegations against Dan Snyder from Tiffany Johnston, and boom, out comes the retirement for Sean Taylor, which they totally botched. Photo ops in front of a porta-john, his number painted on the field while people walked all over it. I mean, just a poor job all around. And so now we have the 4th number to be officially retired, Sonny Jurgensen, long overdue, and someone who I think is maybe the most iconic figure in the history of the organization, because not just because of what he was on the field, a Hall of Fame quarterback and one of the greatest pure passers of all time. It's because of what he did in the radio booth, and most of it right here on AM 630 as part of the team with Frank Herzog and, of course, Sam Huff, Sonny, Sam, and Frank, the iconic trio that did the games for all those years, almost 40 years for Sonny. He retired just before the start of the 2019 season, and a very happy birthday to him today at the age of 88. He's living down in Florida now, and they will retire his number. Reportedly, it's going to be on the last game of the season, which is January 8th when they play the Dallas Cowboys.